Hello, this is Pastor Doug McCoy from the West Side Christian Church. I want to thank you for watching one of our recent messages here online. Also want to extend an invitation to you to join us in person. We do gather as a group physically in person at a place called the Makoy Center in Hilliard. It's right behind the Crooked Can, right off of Main Street. Usually we're there at 10 a.m., but you may want to check our calendar before you come. Sometimes we are on the move. When we're there at the Makoy, this is what you can expect. We all come in 9:30, 10 o'clock. We greet one another, we fellowship, spend some time, talk a little bit, get to know each other, encourage, comfort each other if need be. 10 o'clock, we start our service. We have some songs, a few announcements. Sometimes we take communion to remember the sacrifice and the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We may take up a free will offering where people contribute to God's work financially as they feel led. And then we have a message very much like the one that you are about to watch here today. Usually we spend about an hour together. We depart with smiles, hugs, handshakes, all those wonderful things, because we are trying to be a family doing God's mission together. If that sounds good to you, we would love to have you. Once again, that's 10 a.m. at the Makoy Center, West Side Christian Church. Look forward to meeting you. And I have another message for you this Sunday that comes out of my devotions. I had a message for you 2 Sundays ago, which came out of my devotions. I didn't mean to do 2 of those in a row. I thought there would be one in between, but that's the way the Lord worked it out via the snow and the storm and the cold and all of those things. So, as you know, I do devotions every day, multiple times a day, not as a duty, but because I believe God speaks to me when I do that. I believe that His Word is living and active, which Hebrews 4 says it is. I believe that His Spirit is also living and active, and that it uses the Word as a sword or a tool to speak to us, as Ephesians 6 says. And so I believe that if I come with the Spirit to the Word, I have 2 living and active things there working together, then I am going to receive input from the Lord. He's going to come talk to me. He's going to say something to me, not just for informational purposes, but for living purposes. He's going to give me not just instruction, but He's going to give me guidance and direction and even encouragement. So I do devotions for that purpose multiple times a day, every day, looking for that. I told you 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, about one of those occasions. It was December 7th, 2023, where I was walking around the parking lot because it was so warm that day, and He spoke to me through Matthew 7. He told me I wasn't understanding that passage correctly. He fixed my understanding of it. A couple weeks later, about 3.5 weeks later, He gave me another strong input. This one was on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024, which I regard as being a sacred day. Now, when I grew up, New Year's was kind of frowned upon. We thought that was a dirty holiday, I guess. But I have come to see that the changing of the year is always a time when God not only gives me input, but He gives me input for a longer range. He not only gives me something for today or for this week, but He gives me something for the entire year ahead. So all throughout December into January, I'm looking for that kind of input. I'm looking for the Lord to say something for me that will guide me through the year to come. On New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024, He did exactly that. I went down and I sat at the end of the day for my evening devotions. I sat at my fireplace. If you watched the video we put out last week where I was at my fireplace, that's exactly where I go and do my devotions in the evening during the winter. My cat came and joined me. If you saw the video, you saw the cat. She likes to come around when I do devotions, so she was probably there on January 1st, 2024 as well. I have a little app that I use in the evening. It's called Moravian Daily Text. I know that sounds complicated, but all it is they just give me a random verse. And I like that it's random because that means no human hands are involved. If my hands are involved, I'm going to say, this is what I think I need. If somebody else's hands are involved, they're going to say, this is what we think you need. If no hands are involved, it's God giving me what He knows I need. And when I opened up that app on this day, you see it says Monday, January 1st. This was 2024. This is what I found. Take heed, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint. And I can't explain this to you. I can't tell you how this works. All I know is that when I read those words, I thought or I felt the Lord is here. Okay, the Lord is engaging me right now. He's telling me something I need to know. I can't tell you why some nights it's that way and other nights it really isn't that way. But this night was that way. This night was strong that way. I knew not only that the Lord was speaking to me here, but I knew he was saying something incredibly significant to me here. The only problem with that, the only drawback, is that I didn't really know the context of this verse. See, I just have one verse there. It's from Isaiah 7. We know that verses don't come out of a vacuum. They are influenced by the context, by what's around them, the verses before them, the verses after them. It's very dangerous to just take one verse out of context and run with it. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't automatically know what the context was. Sometimes I do. This week I got Psalm 40 was one night. I know what Psalm 40 is. Joel 2 was one night. I know what Joel 2 is. In a couple weeks, you'll know what Joel 2 is as well, because we're going to look at it here in a couple of Sundays. So I knew those off the top of my head. I knew what the context was. I did not know what the context was here, and I thought you better check, you better investigate what's going on here. Fortunately, the app makes it easy for me. I just click on the reference, and it'll take me to the entire chapter. That's what I did. I clicked where it said Isaiah 7. It took me to Isaiah 7. What I found there is what I call a story. It's a true story. It's his story, but it's still a story. And I want to read that story to you today, or at least part of it to you. I gave Isaiah 7, 3 through 7 to you in your notes. I gave it to you in the New Revised Standard. That's the version that my devotions use. I'm going to read a little more, though. I'm going to pick up in verse 1, and I think we're going to go down through verse 9. And I'm going to read it from the NIV, and we'll just switch over to the Revised Standard Version in the parts where I want to do that. So if you want to turn there with me, you can. Isaiah chapter 7. This is what Isaiah tells us. Picking up in verse 1, he says, when Ahaz, and that's our main character here, Ahaz, son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, was king of Judah. So we're dealing with Ahaz, the king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram, which is Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel. Israel had split from Judah at that time. There were now two kingdoms instead of one. They marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. Now the house of David, that's Ahaz, was told, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. So the hearts of Ahaz and the people were shaken, as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, go out, you and your son Shear-Jashub, and meet Ahaz at the end of the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the washerman's field. Say to him, take heed, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart grow faint because of those two smoldering stumps of firebrands, because of the fierce anger of Rezin of Aram and of the son of Remaliah. Aram, Ephraim, which is another name for Israel, and Remaliah's son have plotted your ruin, saying, let us invade Judah. Let us tear it apart and divide it among ourselves and make the son of Tabeel king over it. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says. It will not take place. It will not happen. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is only Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is only Remaliah's son. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. Yeah, that's powerful, isn't it? That's the story that I found there on New Year's Day night, 2024. I summarized this story just with that phrase, take heed. If you just say take heed to me, or if I just say take heed to myself, that represents to me the entire story, which really goes on, takes up the entire 7th chapter here. Now, you may not be familiar with this story. You may not know the story of Isaiah 7. You may have known it and forgotten it, which was the case for me. I'd probably read this multiple times before that evening, and it just wasn't in the forefront of my mind. You may have never read it, may have never heard it at all. Not everybody makes it all the way to Isaiah 7, so maybe you just haven't encountered it yet. Even though you don't know this story, though, what I want you to understand this morning is that you do know the story. And this gets a little confusing, but I'll try to explain this to you. All stories, whether they're true like this one or fictional like we find in books and movies and TV shows, all stories are really the same thing. They have different specifics. They have different particulars. They have different skins. This one is particularly, specifically about Ahaz, and it happened 2,700 years ago, and Isaiah is involved. Those are the particulars. But in general, all stories follow the same trajectory and basically have the same parts. You may be familiar with Joseph Campbell. I guess he's a scholar of myth. He says all myths can be broken down to one narrative. He calls it the monomyth, or sometimes he calls it the hero's journey. If you want an example, he says go watch Star Wars. He says George Lucas is his #1 student and understood what he said exactly, and Star Wars follows beat for beat the monomyth or the hero's journey. Blake Snyder is a screenwriter in Hollywood. He also wrote a book about screenwriting. He says the same thing. He says all stories basically follow the same outline, the same plot, the same story arc. He calls it dude with a problem. And I like that all stories, he says, boil down to this: dude has a problem. Kurt Vonnegut, author of, I didn't read it in high school. What, Slaughterhouse-Five, is that right? Is that the right? Yeah, Slaughterhouse-Five, several other books. Kurt Vonnegut, well-known author. He says the same thing. He says all stories can be boiled down to man in a hole. So that's what he called. Blake Snyder called it dude with a problem. Kurt Vonnegut calls it man in a hole. Joseph Campbell calls it the hero's journey. Whatever you call it, it's the same story over and over and over again, different particulars, but the same story. So even though you don't know this story, you probably know the story. And on that night, that January 1st, 2024, New Year's Day, my encounter with this story and the story, my encounter with them both, it contributed to me greatly. It did empower me, not just for that year, but really the first half of 2025 as well. And I thought it might empower you this morning. I thought it might contribute to you in that exact same way. So I want to take you through it today. I want us to look at Isaiah 7, go through this story, go through the story as we find it here. As I see it, there are 5 parts. There are 5 movements to this story as God presents it here. The first is what I call the situation. The situation is what we have when the story begins. It's really the catalyst of the story. It's the thing which has happened that drives the story forward. That catalyst, that thing that drives the story forward is, I think in your notes I said, an unprecedented military attack. I don't know that it's entirely unprecedented, but what happens here is kind of unique for the time. Judah and King Ahaz, who King Ahaz is the dude, he's the man in the hole, the dude with the problem. He now is facing not just one nation, not just one army, but two. Two nations have allied themselves to attack him. So Aram, which is Syria, which is where Abraham originally came from before he became the father of the Israelites, they have joined with northern Israel, the northern tribes. They've made a coalition. They're now allies. They're combining their armies. It's 2 against 1, and they are going to attack Ahaz. He is used to fighting all the little nations around him. He's used to fighting Moab. He's used to fighting Edom. He's used to fighting Ammon. He's used to fighting Philistia, if they still existed at that time. But he's used to fighting them one-on-one. He's used to it being man versus man, level playing field. Now it's not a level playing field anymore. Now they've teamed up against him. Now they outnumber him. Now they outgun him. Now they have the potential of overwhelming him. So this isn't just the kind of threat that he's faced before every spring when it's time to go fight. This is an existential threat. This isn't just we're going to take some territory, we're going to take some money, we're going to hold some of your people hostage till you pay to get them back. This is we're going to obliterate you. And they say that. Direct. God says, they say they're going to come in, they're going to dethrone you, they're going to execute you, they're going to tear up the country, they're going to parcel it out piece by piece, they're going to put whoever, we don't know who this son of Tabeel is, but they're going to make him puppet king and place him. So that's what they were saying to him, and that's what he believed. This is existential threat here. This is an extinction level event. It kind of reminds me of these dinosaurs that I found. You know I love the Far Side. Here's another Far Side. What does he, so the one dinosaur is talking to the others. It says, the picture's pretty bleak, gentlemen. The world climates are changing. The mammals are taking over, and we all have brains the size of walnuts. So yeah, it's bad. This could be the end of us. This could be game over. That's exactly where Ahaz is here. That is what he's thinking. That is the problem that the dude has. That is the hole that the man is in. That's the situation, an extinction level existential threat. So that's how the story starts. That's the situation. From there, we go to the commands. God helps Ahaz out here greatly. I mean, this is some wonderful grace here. This is an extreme amount of mercy that God shows this man. He tells the prophet Isaiah, who's about the best prophet you could hope to get, you and your son go and talk to him, and this is what I want you to tell him. And then he gives him that series of commands, those little statements that I found when I opened up my devotion on that New Year's Day evening. So he tells him what he wants to do. He tells him how to handle this unprecedented threat that is coming against him. I'm not sure if there's 3 things that he says here or 4. The New Revised Standard presents it as 4 equal things. The NIV presents it as 3 things. And then the 4th is a summary. In any case, what we have are 3 or 4 commands: take heed, be quiet, and do not fear, which is basically the same thing as do not let your heart grow faint. The problem with those commands is that we today would very easily misunderstand about half of them. The last 2 are simple. Don't be afraid, right? Same command we're given 365 times in the scriptures. I've not done the work, but I've been told 365 times some version of this command, do not be afraid, appears in the Bible. So this is something God tells us often. He's telling that to Ahaz here. Don't be scared. Have no fear. Don't let terror drive you in this moment. So that's what the last 2 commands mean. That's pretty simple. The first 2, though, are little. You could get off course on those ones. Take heed. A lot of times that sounds like something the prophets say when they want you to listen, particularly when you have a history of not listening. There are often times where the prophet has been rejected and he comes back to someone and said, you better take heed what I just told you. And so we might misunderstand that in this way. We might think that this means listen. It really doesn't mean that here. What it means more is guard, keep, or watch. And you're familiar with this too. Like if you go through a place where there's low headspace, right, where you got a danger of knocking your forehead into something, people will tell you, heed the stairs, heed that first step. That may be a little older lingo, but you've probably heard that before. Heed your step there. That is how the word is being used here. Really means something like, pay attention might be good, but the NIV has it as be careful. I think that's a little better. Really think better is what it means here. You're thinking one way and you're coming to a crossroads where you're about to make some decisions. So think better. Be clear in your mind. That's what you need right now. That's what take heed means. And then we get to be quiet. Again, we would think of be quiet as shut up, right? Don't stop talking. Don't make noise. Not what it means here. It means more like be at peace or be at rest or be calm. In fact, that is how the NIV translates it, as be calm. Sam and I were working through these things this week. I was a little concerned if we called this one take heed. That's the phrase that spoke to me loudest, and that's the one I used to refer to this entire story. So I most naturally wanted to call it take heed, but I told Sam, I was like, well, people might think that's a hellfire and brimstone sermon that we're really going to hammer them here on a snowy Sunday morning. So is there any other phrases? And we did see that the NIV called this keep calm. But what I was afraid about on that one is that you would remember that meme from the 2010s, keep calm and do whatever. That actually comes from the 1939 is where that first started. The British government put these posters up when World War II started. They didn't want the people to go crazy, so they told them keep calm and carry on. But in the 2010s, it became a meme, and people started changing the bottom part. The first time I ever saw this or heard about this, I was running on the trail in California, and the dude coming my way, coming against me, his shirt said, keep calm and eat avocados. or something like, and I had no clue where, and then it started popping up all over the place. So I thought that was a little, odd as well. So we really weren't sure which of these commands we should use as the title of the sermon and which really characterize what is happening here. What we do know is this: all told, what God is telling Ahaz here is don't lose it. I think that's a good way to describe what he say. Don't lose it. Don't lose control. Don't lose your head. Paul tells Timothy, millennia after this, he says, keep your head. 2 Timothy chapter 4, keep your head in all situations. It's exactly what Ahaz is being told by God through the prophet Isaiah here. Keep your head. Don't run around like a chicken with your head cut off. Don't give in to despair. Don't give in to doom and gloom. Don't throw up your hands and say it's over. Let's lay down and die. Hang tight. Hold tight, maybe. What's it? Hang on, kitty. Do you remember that one? That's another poster that I could have put up. If you're about my age, you remember being in grade school and there was a poster of a cat hanging by one paw off of like a washing line or something, and it said, hang on, kitty. That is the idea here. That is what God is telling Ahaz to do. Those are the commands. Don't lose it. Don't lose control. Don't lose your head. From there, we go to the third movement of the text. And I maybe split these up more than I needed to, but I wanted to identify them each uniquely. The third movement here is the reality. And the reality is what the situation really is. Remember, we said to Ahaz, this situation looks like extinction level event, existential threat. It looks like game over. That's what he is thinking. That's how he sees it. God comes in and says, no, you're not seeing it correctly. This threat is not what you think it is. And I love the way he describes it. He puts it right after those 3 or 4 commands, right after take heed, be quiet, do not fear. He then says, don't be afraid. Don't let your heart grow faint because of those 2 smoldering stumps of firebrand. In my head, I just shortened that to 2 smoldering firebrands. But he says 2 smoldering stumps of firebrands. That's how he's describing the kings who have made this alliance, who are attacking Ahaz. There were 2 of them. So he says, there's 2 guys coming after you. They're not the undefeatable warlords that you think they are. Instead, they're 2 smoldering firebrands or stumps of firewood. You probably understand what this means here. You've probably been to a campfire. At first, it's raging, it's hot, it's blazing with flame. After a while, though, and everything burns down, there might be one piece that was kind of at the edge of the fire, and you can pick it up, and a little smoke is coming off of it, but it's not hot anymore. There's no flames anymore. It's not really a danger anymore, right? It might look like something, but it's not that dangerous anymore. That's what God is saying about these 2 guys. They look dangerous, but they're not. They may think they're 5-star generals who can lay waste to the land in front of them, but they're really just a couple of pieces of firewood that are mostly burned out. And I would suggest to you that's what most of our threats are. We have a problem assessing our threats. We have a problem of understanding or seeing our opposition, our obstacles properly. There used to be a commercial about this. 1996, I think this was a commercial for Sprite. Are these guys familiar? Have you seen this commercial? Some of you have. So 1996, these guys were like a street basketball team. And you can see they're trying to really look tough. I have seen this commercial so many times, I can repeat it for you verbatim. The one guy he says, this here's Freight Train. That's Freight Train has the basketball. And then he says, this is Pete Pablo. He's the guy with the hat. And then the one to me says, I'm Motif. So intimidating names, intimidating appearance. And then they say, when we're thirsty, we drink Turbo Sport 7. And they hold up this can of soda. But he holds it up wrong. He holds it upside down. And so then you hear the director go, cut. And he says, hey, genius, you've got the can upside down again. And Freight Train starts to cry. Pete Pablo says something ridiculous, and Motif in the middle switches into an English accent. He says, don't talk to me that way. I played Hamlet at Cambridge. So not really the threats that they appear to be, right? That's what God is telling Ahaz here. That's the situation you're in. These guys look like something. They really aren't. This is not the threat you think it is. That is the reality. From the reality, he goes to the promise. That's the 4th stage here. In the promise, he tells Ahaz what's going to happen. And this is kind of weird because he doesn't promise him any type of miraculous deliverance here, which happens in other versions of this story. God will say, hey, I'm going to intervene. I'm going to work this out for you. He doesn't say that here. I'm not even sure he implies it. Instead, he just says, it will not take place. It will not happen. Or the New Revised Standard says, it shall not stand. It shall not come to pass. What he means is these guys are saying, we're going to come in, we're going to kill you, we're going to chop up the land, we're going to pass it out the way we see fit. And God says, no. And I don't know if he means no because I'm going to stop them, or he may just mean no, they're just talking. I mean, they don't have the ability I don't even have to stop them because they don't have the ability to do what they're saying here. But in any case, he is promising Ahaz, it's not going to go down this way. What they are saying will not occur. In fact, he also slides this in. I don't have it in your notes, but in verse 8, he says, within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people, which is historically how it turns. So he's saying right now they think they're a force to be reckoned with. In 65 years, they won't exist anymore, which is absolutely true. The Assyrians will come in and they will destroy them, and they will never be rebuilt. By the time we get to the New Testament, the Samaritans are taking their place. And if you remember, the Jews didn't like Samaria. So that's the history here. So God is telling him, what you're afraid of is not going to occur. Many people have realized this is the true pattern of life, that what you fear usually does not come to pass. Mark Twain quoted as saying this. He says, I've worried about many things in my life. Some of them actually happened. And I like, there's several different versions of that quote. That's my favorite version of it. Did he really say that? I don't know. Who knows? But I like that version. I've worried about many things. Some of them actually happened, which if you reverse that, what is he really saying? Most of the things I worried about didn't happen. Most of the things I have worried about had no chance of happening. I was worried for nothing. And that is what God is promising Ahaz here. You are worried for nothing. It isn't going to happen. But he not only makes this promise, there's one more thing he does before we launch into the fifth and final part of this story. He asks Ahaz for a response. And that's that verse 9. So he tells him, hey, here's the commands. Here's what I want you to do. Here's the reality. These guys aren't as tough as you think they are. Here's the promise. This isn't going to happen. And then he says what? Believe me. Trust me. If you do not stand by faith, in verse 9, you will not stand at all. So the way to get through this is to believe in what I'm saying and to act upon it. That's the promise that he makes Ahaz, and that's the corresponding response he wants to receive from Ahaz. This isn't going to happen. Trust me. Believe me. So that's the verses that we read. That takes us through verse 9. That's the first four movements of this story. There's one more movement, though, one final one, and we didn't read these verses, and that's what I call the rejection. And this is where the story goes bad. Here's what I have not told you the entire time we've been together. This is a negative example of the story, meaning it doesn't go the way it should have. There are positive examples of this story, many of them in the scriptures. This one happens to be negative. It's negative because Ahaz does not obey God's commands. He does not trust in God's promise. He does not see reality the way God does. Instead, he does the classic human thing that we all do. He took matters into his own hands. And you don't exactly see that here. What you see is this weird exchange. If we pick up again in verse 10, it says, again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz. We are to understand through the prophet Isaiah, ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or the highest height. So he said, this is not going to happen. And if you want confirmation, if you want me to prove to you that this won't happen, I'll give you a sign. And you can make that sign be anything you want. You just tell me and I'll do it. Ahaz's son Hezekiah would have a similar experience in Isaiah chapter 38 where he thought he was going to die. Isaiah said, you're not going to die. Ask God for a sign. And he said, make God move the shadow back 10 steps on the staircase. And God did it. So similar situation here. You can ask me for anything you want and I'll do it to you to prove that what I'm saying to you is true. And instead of doing what Hezekiah did, Ahaz instead says, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, hear me, you house of David. Is it not enough to try the patience of men? Will you try the patience of my God also? Very strange if you don't understand the backstory here. It sounds like Ahaz has done something good. Oh no, I'm not going to ask God for a sign. I'm not going to put him to test. That sounds reasonable to us. But Isaiah gets mad. And if this is all you have, you're not going to understand it very well. Fortunately, this isn't all we have. We also have the book of Kings, which Isaiah was involved in. And in 2 Kings 16, what we're told is that rather than trusting in God, Ahaz went to Tiglath-Pileser, the king of the Assyrians. Assyria is an empire. They are worse than an alliance. They are worse than, you have just a nation and then you have two nations that are allied together. That's a little bit worse. Empire is worse than that. And so in his fear, in his belief that this was an existential threat, he goes to Assyria and he pays them and he says, help me. And they do. They attack Syria and Syria has to withdraw. Israel can't stand on its own. The threat seems to be nullified. All's well that ends well, right? Except for this. What is Ahaz now? He's a vassal of Assyria. He thought he was defending his throne, but what did he do? He gave it away. Not only so, he opens the door to Assyria because they come take a look at things and say, yeah, this looks pretty nice. Maybe we'll add this to our portfolio, which is exactly what they do. They come in and they take Israel, they take Edom, they take Ammon, they take everybody. They almost took Hezekiah in Jerusalem, but God miraculously saved them. That's Isaiah 36 and 37. Worst of all, Ahaz opens himself up to idolatry because when he goes to Assyria to make this deal, he sees this pagan altar and he likes it. And he says, I'd like one of those in the temple. And so he has it constructed and he brings idolatry into God's holy temple there in Jerusalem. So he becomes a vassal. He opens the hen house to the fox and he becomes an idolater. On top of all that, his example is recorded for us. We see he's not a man of faith. Abraham was a man of faith. 3 times God told him to do things. We see in Hebrews 11, move into the promised land, even though you don't have a house there. Trust me that you're going to have a child, even though you're 100 years old. Sacrifice that child. 3 times he obeyed. All Ahaz had to do was just sit tight, and he wouldn't do it. So he goes down in history as a man of unfaith. If Abraham is the man of faith, then Ahaz is the man of unfaith because he rejected the promise and the reality and the commands of God. When he was in this terrible situation, he rejected what God said to him, what God told him, what God asked him to do. So that's the story of Isaiah chapter 7. And again, I don't think it's just a story with little a, little s. I think it's a story with capital A, capital S. I think it's really the story with capital T, capital S. I really do believe all stories are the same thing, and this is the story that we find over and over. If that's not the case, if this is not every story, it certainly is a story that comes up again and again and again, because Hezekiah, Ahaz's son, will live out this same story in Isaiah 36 and 37. Jehoshaphat, another king of Judah, will live out this same story. Abraham lived out the same story. The particulars were different, but the trajectory was the same. Jesus will live out this same story, won't he? Should I lay down my life? Should I allow myself to be crucified? Will the Father really raise me from the dead if I do? So Jesus lived out this story. I believe this is the story of the Bible. This is the story of the faith. And I further believe God is inviting us here today to live this story, not as Ahaz, but as Hezekiah, as Jehoshaphat, as Abraham, as Jesus. He's inviting us to live the story the right way. That's why he gave this to me on New Year's Day, 2024. I was a dude with a problem. On New Year's Day, 2024, I was a man in a hole. And I was for a long time. And after I received these words, I went and I wrote them into a prayer. And I prayed them over and over and over again. I think I prayed this prayer every day or nearly every day all the way through 2024 and into 2025. When God brought this to me, he wasn't just saying, hey, here's a good fact for you to know, Doug, or here's a right or a wrong thing to do. He was saying, this is where you are, and this is how I want you to face it, how I want you to handle it as we go together into the future. And he is inviting you to do that in the exact same way. Let me ask a question. I don't mean to put anybody on the spot. I don't mean to be crude here, but I'm just kind of curious. All of us either have lived, will live, or are living this story. I wonder if you agree with me in that. If you have lived this story before or are living this story now, raise your hand. I'm just curious. Yeah, there you go. There you go. We all have lived this story probably a couple times. We'll probably live them a couple of more times. And God is showing us here, not only showing us how to handle them, but inviting us to handle them this way. I think in your notes, this is how I put it. He is telling us that the situation may not be as bad as we think. Okay, that's the reality. You think this is a terrible threat. It's really just a smoldering firebrand. He is encouraging us to believe in his promises and trust in him alone. Don't take matters in your own hands. Don't go to Assyria and open the door to the chicken coop. Okay, stand by faith. And lastly, he is calling us not to lose it. I think those 3-4 commands that he gives us right there, that is the heart of this story. That's the heart of what he is telling us to do here. Don't lose it. My friends, may we live this story better than Ahaz did. We don't have a choice to not live it. That's not our option. That's not our call. We're going to live this story. When we do, may we live it better than Ahaz did. May we keep the commands that he didn't keep here. May we take heed, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart grow faint. Hey, it's me again. Wanted to thank you a second time for watching, spending this time with us. We really appreciate it. We would love you to be connected with us. We would love to get connected with you. Several ways you can do that. You can go to our website, find all sorts of information and a connect card to get involved there. You can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram. Look us up. You will find us Westside Christian Church in Columbus, Ohio. Again, love to be connected with you. Love to get to know you. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again.